All right, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the the Degenerate NFL podcast. Joining me, as pretty much always, Zach is probably our most reliable co-host here. No offense to any other guys, we got stuff we're doing. Zach again joining me. It was an interesting week in the NFL. We're going to be talking about some matchups that we particularly thought were interesting for some good, some bad, some I would say just in different reasons. But we're not going to cover every game. We don't have time for that. Although I'm sure we could. We would probably find the time for it if we had it. But focus on just three games every week. Probably is going to be this format. Just so you know, we are going to try to do it that way to just highlight the things we find most interesting, kind of like we did in week one. But Zach, how do you feel about week three action? I know your team, unfortunately, in the early window in the Thursday game, did not come with the upset, but no one really expected that. But otherwise, how'd you feel about the weekend?
I mean, unfortunately, they gave me that awful thing called hope, and
Yeah.
it kind of fell apart towards the end there. But that's neither here nor there. It was an interesting week. I think some things were solidified as being like, wow, this could be a thing, and other things were like, oh man, that's not what I was expecting.
Hmm.
It was definitely interesting. Some interesting games, some very interesting games.
Yeah, and again, we'll talk about six of them today, three for each of us. We're going to lead conversations on those. But one of the things I want to throw out there, just because it's one of the talks of this week and one of the most interesting aspects of this week, and when some of our games have some to do with that, a lot of blocked kicks. And I mean a lot of blocked kicks, like to the
A
point
lot
where
of
it's
block
almost like,
kicks and a
yeah,
lot of kicking issues.
yes,
I
generally
don't think
speaking,
some of our games are cover that, but some of the teams that we're not covering have some serious questions. We're not
yeah.
going to cover the Falcons game, but what a decision to make this week. Um, yeah,
Again, like the amount of block kicks that changed games or won games, lost games, like crazy stuff. Like obviously, not one of the games we'll be talking about. Just because there's a lot of reasons why I decided not to talk about because I think it's a very fluky game. But Eagles Rams, that one is the one that everyone's talking about. And if you are a bettor, if you are someone who likes to do sports betting, it's being talked about primarily because of the way that line ended, where
what a bad beat.
oh man, yeah, to have it return for a touchdown unnecessarily had people heated for sure. I know I had the Rams plus 3.5, so I wasn't particularly happy. But again, a big guy got to score if you can score. Happy for Jordan Davis, but it's causing a lot of conversations to be had. The Rams honestly probably should have won that game in a lot of different ways, and they weren't able to do it. So I'm sure that'll come up again at some point. But again, block kicks one of the themes of the week, and just special teams in general.
Also, going to be interesting with that game to see how the discussion of the tush push continues
Yes,
to evolve.
it's interesting. Oh
I
boy,
definitely I wrote an article about that for
mm-hmm.
PFSN because literally the first one they did not call it correctly, and
Nope.
something's gonna have to change. Something's gonna have to change about it. So, but
Yeah,
besides that, also the backup quarterback play was very interesting this week.
yeah,
That a little
up
bit.
and down, but a lot of up,
Yep.
really, honestly. Um, Not going to talk about one of the games that featured heavily with this, but I will mention it right now. The Vikings just took it to the Bengals, and I'm not saying it's 110% over for Bengals fans. You're 2-1 after the 2-0 start, but
Concerning.
life's not super easy without Joe Burrow out there. It wasn't very easy with him out there, to be fair. Easily could have been a team that was 0-3 right now with just a couple things not going their way. The offensive line might be the worst run blocking unit I've ever seen. And with the backup
Is it
quarterback
is
in
it
there,
is it
go ahead.
worse than the Packers?
Well, they played the Browns, who admittedly have made every team look like the worst run blocking unit in the league. So that's a whole other
Fair.
thing. I'll talk about that game a little bit later for a lot of reasons. But yeah, Carson Wentz is a starting quarterback. I will have to deal with him for the first time in a very long time as a Steelers fan in Dublin this week coming up. Very excited for that. But let's get into our games that we want to talk about today. And I want to let you start off, Zach. You have three games, and I have three. Where do you want to start here? Is it going to be Dolphins Bills?
We might as well.
Yeah, that's probably the place to start. So
Yeah, we'll rip the Band-Aid off. Obviously,
yeah,
I'm wearing the Virginia Tech hat because my teams are a combined 1-6 going into
yeah. The one win is Virginia Tech.
yeah, we're going well. Not it's not even just that the one win is Virginia Tech. It's the one win over Wofford. It's not even like we could have beat
Yeah,
anybody else.
yeah,
If we're being honest, it should be 2-5. But I'm a fan of poor poverty franchises.
yeah.
So yeah, it went better than expected. I will say that. But Tua had to rear his ugly head at some point and did the most Tua thing possible and threw the worst interception I've ever seen, as is the story every week. I don't really know where the Dolphins go from here. It was very, I will say, comforting to see that Stephen Ross, the owner of Miami, put a statement out this week, putting his trust in McDaniel, which I don't think is misguided. I think of every person in this organization, McDaniel is the least responsible for everything going on because he is, to an extent, only able to do with what he is dealt, and he has been dealt a very interesting situation. Is he probably the one that can get the most out of Tua? Yes, but if we're being honest, Tua is the only one that can get the most out of Tua, and he kind of steps in the way of that too often. So I do think the only way forward is for Miami to understand that, hey, Chris Greer has to go. He's been a part of this organization since before Stephen Ross was a majority owner, which I think is insanity to really think about to its core. And he's been a part of scouting, which means he's been a part of player personnel and player scouting and player addition and roster construction for the entire time that he's been with the franchise. So at some point, the laws of insanity have to come through and just say, when you do the exact same thing over and over again, you're going to make yourself insane. There's no change. Like, something has to happen. Now, I don't know what the way forward with Tua is with the amount of money he has. If you're going to pull, and I say this only in the sense of they're sitting him, and I know he's hurt, but like they also probably wouldn't be playing him if he was okay. But like, he's not as awful as Deshaun Watson. But you just look at him and be like, hey, I know we're paying you a lot of money, but we're going to pay you a lot of money to sit on the bench because it's not good, and we need somebody else out there. Feasibly, you look next season and you draft somebody that's not horrible, but maybe needs some time to get better, a la Shador Sanders situation or something like that, and you let him sit and you play a different bridge. But I think it's clear that Tua is not the bridge to be playing for any offense at the moment, or at least for Miami, who has no offensive line when he needs a better offensive line. So as far as Buffalo, my God, use James Cook a bit more, because like I know Josh Allen can do a lot, but James Cook is a great running back, and there's no reason that Josh Allen needs to be doing as much of the heavy lifting as he does when you have a guy like James Cook in your backfield. So for them going forward, Jesus, please use him more and utilize his talents, because Allen doesn't have to be the wrecking ball, and preserving his health has to be the most important thing for them long term and throughout this season. Because if James Cook goes down, okay, you can supplement that with the fact that Allen can run. But if Allen goes down, yeah, you can supplement that with Cook, but somebody still has to throw the ball, and you need Allen on the opposite end. So they definitely need to be more committed to running Cook as opposed to letting Allen just do what he's been doing. And I know they say there's no designed runs, but even then, like you got to call more. You got to call more plays for the guy.
Yeah, I think with Tua at this point. Now I'm gonna pull a stat that I'm not gonna sit here and say that like it's any sort of like gospel, because it's not. And we this conversation happens anytime you talk about this particular website. But Pro Football Focus has two stats that I'm gonna talk about with Tua right now. Not specifically with him, but just stats that they use to kind of help grade quarterbacks: big time throws and turnover worthy play percentage. Those or turnover worthy plays, and then percentages for those two things. Tua in his career has 86 big time throws to 96 turnover worthy plays. You do not want to be in a situation where a quarterback is even close to a 1-to-1 ratio, but especially not over the course of a full career that he's had up to this point, and definitely not sub 1-to-1. It is,
full career. I mean, he's had a lot of
yeah,
timeouts.
but
So I
again, like the
mean,
percentages there, not great.
yeah,
He has always been a guy that because of the way he plays and the lack of arm talent, he's going to put the ball in harm's way at times, right? It's just part of existing in the world of Tua Tagovailoa. So unfortunately, when you don't have elite offensive coaching that McDaniel has had in the past, but so far this year has not been that type of guy. When you don't have Tyreek Hill playing completely out of his mind and Jalen Waddle supplementing that, and the run game working on all cylinders, and the offensive line doing enough to pass protect and to run block, it just stops working. Like it doesn't work the same, right? And it doesn't mean that it never works. I mean, there was drives in this game where he did look the part. He looked a lot like the Tua that had put up, the 70 points against the Broncos a couple years ago, and all like that type of stuff. But it's much fewer and far between, and it's not as consistent down to down either. And there's just no way for this offense to consistently move because he'll make a mistake or the run blocking will fail or the pass protection will fail immediately. Something's always seemingly wrong about the operation. And there's a lot of moments where they're just not getting the play in fast enough either, which is a whole other problem that is so weird for an offense that has mostly been together for the longest time, especially at the quarterback. Just everything just feels off in every way possible. And then on defense for this team, they have no pass rush. Where's the pass rush for a team that is, if all with all of them healthy, should have three above average edge rushers, and right now none of them are getting consistent pressure. It's just this doesn't work, right? Like when all the good parts of your team over the past few years are not playing well, and you're not getting a boost from another part of the team that hadn't been performing well and now is, you get 0-3. Like that's what happens, and I don't see it really getting a whole lot better. Like I don't see that happening. They're gonna pick up some wins later in the season, probably against teams that are even less talented than them or even more out of it than them at some point. They'll probably win more games than a few other teams that are 0-3 right now as well. But it's gonna be for nothing. Like there's no outcome here to me where I think that they save not only their jobs here in Miami, but also give the fans any reason to be excited about the future of this team this year. And so it's just tough. And I know you know this as well as anyone, but like that is a really tough spot to be in as a franchise and as a fan base. And then on Buffalo side, again, like this team's going to win like 14 games. Like they did not play that well in this game overall, in my opinion, and they still won by 10 points. Like it just, if you're playing Buffalo, you have to be able to do one of two things. You have to be able to dominate the line of scrimmage, which is basically impossible against this offensive line. At least on the defensive side of things, you can beat that group. Like they are beatable. I don't think they're insane up front. Obviously Bose has been a really good addition so far, and they need to get Oliver back. But like that's a beatable front. It may not be overly easy to beat them, but you can overpower that front. The offensive line for this team, it goes back to what you said about James Cook. They can pretty much just run the football whenever they want to, it feels like, and it's going to work. Like they are just moving people constantly. They did against the Ravens. They did it against definitely the Jets. They definitely did against the Dolphins when they wanted to as well. Like when you have that much room to operate with a back that has the explosiveness that Cook has, you're going to get 10, 15, 20 yards almost every other carry, it feels like. So they need to lean in that more, like you said. I think they want to keep taking a little bit more off Allen's plate so that he doesn't have to put himself into harm's way as a runner himself or do too much as a passer and end up with the turnovers like he had earlier in his career. And I think that's going to ultimately be what happens. But it is really interesting to see them play a kind of not really their best game at all and still win by 10 points against a team that should at least have the talent to keep up with them. So, any other thoughts on the Dolphins-Bills game here?
Hear me out. I'm looking at the schedule right now. I honestly do not see a winnable game for Miami until week 13.
Okay.
I think this team could go 2
Well,
and 15.
let me take a look at their schedule again here real quick because I haven't looked recently.
Because we play the Jets at home.
I think
week.
you guys will win that game.
I do not think so. I do not think so at all.
Listen, the Jets are really bad. I know they pushed the Bucs last week. I don't think they're good. Like, I think that defense is
The
going to have
problem
trouble.
is they can score points, and we cannot reliably. And I think their defense is good enough to give. So here's the thing: I like all these defenses have a good enough front that it's going to give
That's true.
Tua and the offense fits, because like all of them, New York, Carolina, is getting better by the week, and they're going to continue to get better. The Chargers is a wrap. That is a wrap. That is not happening. I'm not confident about beating Cleveland with how crazy their defense is right now. Like that's not
That's
happening.
true.
Atlanta, I think, is a toss up, but I do think Atlanta can
Atlanta's tough to
work
talk.
out their
Yeah, we'll
kinks
see what they look like at that
and
point.
get through, especially with how their defense looks right now. They're getting pass rush, they're getting pressure. Baltimore, Buffalo, Washington,
No.
Then the bye week. New Orleans is the first game where I'm like, okay, maybe,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, I can
possibly.
see it.
And then the only other one on the schedule is Cincinnati. Those are the only two games where I'm like, New Orleans and Cincinnati are the only games where I'm like, all right, maybe we can win this.
I
And
do think
again,
winnable too.
I
Like, if we're using winnable as a term, I think you can beat the Jets at least one of those two games. I think you could. I think
I
the
hope so.
Panthers are definitely beatable. The Falcons did everything in their power to lose that game, and they did. Like, I don't know how much I love the Panthers still. The Browns, again, like, they should be beatable, but that defense is admittedly going to be a problem for pretty much like the Browns might win like 7 games this year, pretty much just on their defense alone. Like
oh yeah, no, if they can, but again, if they can beat the Packers, there's no reason why
they
can't
can. I just think it's not a
and
guarantee that you guys can't beat them.
yeah.
And like I said, after that though, like Saints, Jets again. I mean, I'll be honest with you, the Steelers losing to you guys in December would be a classic Steelers move. Unfortunately, I'm not betting that necessarily, but I'm saying it would be a classic Steelers thing.
But like,
so
to an extent, and this all goes to, will Stephen Ross do the right thing and fire Chris Greer? Because if you end up going a 2-15 or a 3-14, you're guaranteed at least top 5.
You're gonna have the number 1 pick if you win 2 games this year. I think. I don't think any other team's losing more than 13, 14 games.
And it's gonna be so upsetting if he just sits there and he's like, "All right, Chris, guess what? You get to do it again." And I'm just gonna sit there and be like, "Why am I
going to take like Drew Aller first overall if you let him?" Which that's not the right podcast for that discussion. But anyway, yeah, I understand the issues here. Yeah, it's going to be tough.
So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with his team. But I mean, again, I kind of do wish that McDaniel would get the chance to go long term. I know he won't get the chance to go long term just because of the way that football works, because he hasn't been the problem. But like,
he'll be an offensive coordinator for someone in like either next year or the year after. He'll rebuild his value, and then like maybe he'll get another shot somewhere. I don't know. But
I honestly feel like there's teams right now that he would be an upgrade, like Tennessee.
Well, Tennessee should call him next offseason to run the offense, maybe, not to coach the team. I don't think he should be a head coach at this point. I think he can be. I think. Well, that's fair, but like you shouldn't shoot for like just better than Brian Callahan if you're firing Brian.
Yeah,
like you should shoot for like someone who's actually definitely good potentially. I think Tennessee needs to hire like a veteran coach, but that's besides the point. Anyway, I'm going to move on to my first game that I want to talk about. And a lot of reasons I want to talk about it. Browns versus Packers. This is a fascinating case study in what happens when a team like the Packers, who the first 2 weeks of the season, pretty comfortably the best football team in the world. Like, I don't think anyone can really argue that through 2 weeks, right? Going into a hostile environment against a team that has the type of defensive talent that the Browns possess. This is one of those games where you get to find out just how far ahead a team like the Packers are at this point in the season compared to teams like the Browns, who, yes, are talented on defense, but don't have a whole lot else going for them. Some pieces on offense you like, but for the most part, this is a bad football team. And they find a way to lose. They're up 10-0 at one point. Browns get a field goal. This is another game that was affected by a blocked kick where the Browns would have had a chance or would have had to come back from 2 scores. Instead, they only have to score touchdowns to tie the game up. They do so off of a Jordan Love interception. This was one of those games where if you're someone who loves Jordan Love, and I do like him a lot. I do think he's a good quarterback. I had him going into the season. We ended up not doing an episode about this, but I had him 14th on my quarterback list going into the season. I thought he was solidly an above average quarterback and who oftentimes played at a top 10 level, but just sometimes had his blips. Through 2 games, looked like a guy who's going to ascend into the top 10 comfortably for me, and then this game happens, right? And to be fair, his offensive line got their ass kicked. I mean, no one on that group did anything to stop the Cleveland front, like not a single thing. So there is that element of it, but he does have to take ownership of the offense to some degree as the quarterback. Josh Jacobs had nowhere to go. He was bottled up in a way that you just don't really see guys of his caliber get bottled up. And ultimately, they lose the game, right? 13-10. For the Packers, I think they're going to be fine. I think going into Cleveland early in the season against a defense that is fresh and going after it, that's just tough. You're going to lose that game sometimes, even if you're a great team. For the Browns, though, I think it's more interesting on their end because I do wonder, like, let's assume that the defense keeps playing at a similar level to this. One, going to be one of the best run defenses in modern NFL history. Like they're off to that kind of start. You look at what they've allowed on the ground to Chase Brown, who's a really good running back. Derrick Henry did absolutely nothing against them when they said he wasn't going to, and they did it. And then Jacobs averages less than 2 yards a carry. Like they are off to about
not even that, but Green Bay had 31 carries for 81 yards.
Exactly. Like that's
ridiculous
for a team that consistently runs the ball well with LaFleur. Like they just could not get it going. And yeah, there's some guys in for injury on the offensive line and all that stuff. But again, like this Browns group is just they're just killing people in the ground game right now. And Myles Garrett, obviously, in the pass game, like that's a whole problem. This Browns team, as bad as I think they kind of are on offense for the most part, I mean, they have not scored more than 20 points yet. I do think their defense is good enough to get them to at least that like 6-7 win mark. And then that puts you in a position where, okay, are you going to put one of these rookie quarterbacks in at some point to see what they have? And if you do that, going into the season next year, are you going to have, or going to draft season this year, are you going to have a high enough pick to get the quarterback you might want if one of these young guys don't look like the answer? And I'm going to be honest, I don't think either of them are. I don't think Sanders or Gabriel have a real shot at being the guy here. And so if that's the case, winning 6 or 7 games might save some people's jobs and might make you look better than you should have. But I do wonder if you end up with like the 8th pick in the draft, who are you going to get? Because right now, they have the ammunition to go up and spend 2 first-round picks to get higher. But you don't want to have to do that if you don't have, like, if it's not necessary. Like, if you can naturally get the 3rd overall pick and you can get maybe the 2nd quarterback off the board or whatever it is, that's really advantageous position to be in because then you have another first-round pick to supplement the roster with instead of having to use it to go up. So it's just interesting. Obviously, you don't want your favorite team to lose. And if you're a Browns fan, you're probably really excited about this defense right now. But it is an interesting case study of, like, is this going to actually end up possibly hurting them long-term to have the defense be as good as it was right now?
Yeah. It's interesting from the Browns aspect because like there's a couple things to be like excited about. Kinshawn Judkins
did.
Great.
I forgot to mention him. He looks good.
See him get on the field and get active. Yeah. Cedric Tillman caught all of his targets. And Njoku looked good. Like the offense doesn't look awful, but it could be better if you have a better quarterback.
They just can't get points on the board right now.
So, yeah, and that's the thing. And this defense is incredible. As for the Packers, I mean, like we just talked about with the rushing attack, that benefits Jordan Love to say like, hey, like, yeah, you struggled, but like the entire
this was not a Jordan Love like by himself. He had one really bad play, but other than that, it wasn't like this was just him tanking the offense all day. So
yeah, and thankfully for them, I think what if there was any good golden silver, or I mean any silver lining, Matthew Golden
finally threw some accurate balls to Matthew Golden. We'd love to see that.
And you're getting them involved. So we'll see how that works out. But again, like they lost
Jaden Reed to injury last week. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, Jaden Reed. They lost Jaden Reed.
Yeah.
So
Golden.
You're trying to find who's gonna fill in. I'm not as concerned. They're probably going to go into Dallas this week and straight up just like absolutely.
If we don't destroy the Cowboys, then I'm going to start wondering if the Packers are as good as I thought. That's the only thing that might do that.
Yeah,
because you lose the Browns on the road against that defense, I'll give you a pass in week 3. We'll see.
Jordan Love should have his way in
He's
here.
already done it before.
There should be no
with less talent.
Exactly. So and it'll be a good get back game. We'll see what happens because I mean they can't even generate any pressure. So I think that'll be a nice bounce back. And I mean, really just goes. Honestly, the Browns are just a testament to like even the bad teams do have redeeming qualities, and they can ruin people's days and really make it hard to win, and just goes to show how tough the AFC really is.
Yeah, I'll be talking a little bit about that later for my team, unfortunately. What game do you want to move to of yours next here?
I'll do the Commanders next.
Interesting game in a lot of ways, but
very interesting game. And not so much on the Raiders side, just because I mean, there's not much to talk about on the Raiders side. It's not looking like a great year again for them. But you really hope that they can get Genty going and that Smith can really kind of like snap out of some of the stuff that's been happening in the beginning of the season and get back to how he looked with Seattle. But for the Commanders, one, you really hope Terry McLaurin is okay, because that's a little concerning with everything that happened in the offseason. You signed the contract, have all this money, and then through 2 weeks, he did turn it on a bit at the end of the game last week, and then he turned it on again with that big pass this week. But you hope Daniels is good to go, because if you don't have Daniels and McLaurin and you're down Eckler, this is like worst case scenario for the beginning of the season. However, on the flip side of that, it was very, very, very good to see how comfortable Marcus Mariota looked, how great he looked on the offense, really like just stepped in. And you hope that if Daniels can't go this week, that he can go and just really fill in and do that again. It's Atlanta, so it might not be that bad. They both have the rushing ability and the ability with their legs. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But I mean, Washington looks good. It's a different type of team from last year, even with like the very little differences, but they still look really good.
It's going to be really interesting with the Commanders because the first week of the season against the Giants, like they were fine and the Giants were just bad, so they were able to take care of them easily. Packers, again, until we saw them kind of choke it away against the Browns last week, we thought that they were the best team in the league, and they still might. We'll see. So that's one that's like, whatever. Them coming out against a Raiders team that, they're struggling right now for sure. Like they're not the team that I was hoping they'd be early on in the season. To hang 41 on them with a backup quarterback just makes you feel a lot better about the roster more so. And I'm not worried about, assuming he gets healthy, Jaden Daniels. Like, I'm not worried. I know the Packers game wasn't particularly great. I'm not worried about it. That Packers front had him in hell. Like, they just did. And they were not getting open in the passing game. So I think against the majority of teams in the NFL, the Commanders have a very good shot week to week to come away with victories. And the running game in particular with this group, like they had this kind of three-headed monster backfield this game where Rodriguez took the bulk of the carries, but McNichols had the huge run for a touchdown. Mariota obviously used his legs. Like that trio of backs is good. Bill scored a touchdown again. Like that trio of backs can get it done. Like I don't think any of them, maybe Merritt could be something somewhat special at some point, but none of them probably are. But they're good enough as a unit to get it done, especially with a rushing threat at quarterback, which they have with Mariota and Daniels, right? So very interesting for them. I think the biggest takeaway I have from this game, though, is that the Raiders are just fundamentally lost on the offensive line. Like Geno Smith, his numbers looked really good. I think he played well overall. He had a couple big plays, but obviously not enough to keep pace with 41 points allowed by his defense. The run game with Genty, I still think that it's going to eventually work out with him in Las Vegas. I think they have the assets and the ability to help the offensive line within the next year or so, but it just simply isn't good enough right now. Like you need to give a guy like this space to work because yes, he is explosive, but he's not quite as like quick twitch and explosive as some other backs. His value is once you get him past the line and once you get him into space, he's just impossible to tackle. And there's too many times that he's getting impacted at the line of scrimmage. He's not getting past the line with any sort of freedom. And we've seen the few times he's shown a lot of what he showed at Boise State, but it hasn't been happening enough. right? And that's why you're getting 3.8 whatever amount of yards per carry he's averaging right now on the year. That is the biggest disappointment for the Raiders for me. Is we knew the defense might be bad. They don't have a lot of talent except for Crosby and a couple other guys there. We knew the offensive line would probably not be great, but hopefully a little bit better than this. But we kind of all thought at least that, okay, the running game is going to be awesome with Genti because the offensive line is good enough to allow that to happen. It just hasn't been, and that's what you get when this is the results you get when that's the case.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Sorry, I got off put because they were saying that the tickets for the Minnesota Pittsburgh game are $799.
Well, Dublin, like, so that's
yeah,
what will happen in international games.
Yeah. But no, as far as this game, it's just a little disappointing. I drafted Janty in a couple of leagues and American Hampton, so they see Hampton. It was nice to see Hampton turn things up this week. But as far as Janty, like it's going to be interesting to see how they get him incorporated more, and they need to figure out the offensive line, like you said, and just and figure out what to do from here, because they have the pieces, they have some things they need to do better, and you just really would hope that they were doing a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, again, like they need to figure it out ideally before the end of this year, because you don't want to completely waste his rookie season, but that's kind of the direction we're heading right now. So we'll have to see if they can turn around there. Next game I want to get to, I'll save the best game actually to talk about last. So I'll go to my team here, Patriots versus Steelers. Yeah, this was one of those classic Steelers games. And to be fair, part of me is like glad that it's still possible, because I was a little bit worried that this defense didn't have one of these in them anymore with the way that they played the first 2 weeks of the season. But this is the classic, like, okay, the Steelers are getting beat in every single way, but they're going to get just enough bullshit turnover magic to make the game land in their favor. And boy, did that.
Yeah, I was going to say the classic Steelers game is 6 turnovers.
I mean, this is the type of performance this defense is known for, of like, we're going to give up 3rd and 10 a couple times, we're going to have some stupid plays, but we're going to get the ball 5 times too in this game for some reason. And that's what they did. 4 fumbles by Patriots runners and Drake May, an interception on Drake May in the red zone that stopped the touchdown drive there, a fumble on the goal line. Like, this had every trope for a Steelers game you've ever seen. The quarterback play is terrible for the most part, but they get just enough touchdown drives. There's no run game to be had. The defense is, again, giving up huge plays on 3rd and 13 for some reason constantly. By far the worst third and long defense in the NFL through 3 weeks, by the way, like not even remotely close to anyone else. Hate to see that. But again, they got the turnovers and they ultimately were able to win. The problem is, when you win the turnover margin by like 4, you're not supposed to win by a touchdown, and barely at the very last second. That's not good. I don't think I have to tell anybody that. Steelers fans, Patriots fans, anybody. The fact that the Patriots had the ball with a chance to go down and tie the game is asinine, horrendous. You cannot allow that to happen. But they did, and somehow they came away with it. Now, again, it's a road win against a team that I do think is a little bit better than their 1-2 record would suggest. I think they definitely should have beat the Patriots week 1. That's a whole other, or the Raiders in week 1. It's a whole other conversation. But for the Steelers end of things, again, I am someone who covers this team full time. I am someone who has been a fan of this team for a very long time. None of this surprises me, Zach. And I said this before the season, the Steelers are just going to be the same team in a different font. They're going to win 9 games, maybe 10. They're going to either be in the wild card or they're going to be just outside of it. And they're going to win stupid-ass games like this to get there. That's what this team does. They don't win normal. They don't win with any sort of like consistency, especially not in any sort of blowout fashion most of the time. And the couple times they do, it's always a flash in the pan. That's what this team has shown to be, and it's with a less competent defense than we've seen in the past, because their best players, Cam Hayward and TJ Watt, who were great in this game overall, aren't quite the same players that they were. Right, that's been very clear. As good as they still are, they're not quite the players that they have been in the past. And I do think it's going to lead to a lot more games where the offense has to bail them out. And outside of the Jets game through 3 weeks, they have not shown the ability to be able to do that. So very curious where this team goes from here. But I do wonder if we're going to see a lot of these types of games, and you just got to hope that enough of them go their way.
Yeah. Very low offensive output for the
Yes,
Steelers, which again, with the 5 turnovers, is a bit
a little bit.
concerning.
Well, I have a
Um,
stat for you in a minute,
I
but
will
go ahead.
I will say, in defense of Drake May, I thought he played well despite his 2
There's a
turnovers.
lot of good from him.
The the Steelers defense had him in hell, sacking
Yeah.
him 5 times. So like and again, I don't think there's a reason that Drake May should be leading the team, especially the Patriots in rushing. That's a little concerning. So we need to see a bit more from New England as far as like getting the offense balanced. He looks good in the passing game. Like, yeah, that red zone interception was a little disappointing, but he's brought Hunter Henry back from the dead.
Hunter Henry has a legacy game every year like this, where it's like 2 touchdowns or whatever. It's so funny. Every single year, you can bank on him giving you one of those. But
well, and he's been really good at. There's been so many picks invested in the offense over the past few years for New England before Vrabel got there, and May has found a way to give value to some of those
yeah,
picks. I think about Kayshon
oh yeah,
Boutte. I think about Demario Douglas, who
Douglas.
he's
Yep.
found like some connection with. They signed Henry and Austin Hooper, and like he's really been able to find ways to get them the ball and kind of validating those investments, even though they weren't made for him.
Mm-hmm.
They
Most of
weren't
them, yeah.
brought here with Drake May in mind. So as far as the Steelers, you really it's I won't say it's disappointing because I do think that still the team is like still gelling together a little bit, but you would want to see more from the offense with how much was invested in the offseason. And it's a bit annoying that there isn't this much, but hey, at least you've won 2 games. That's better than not winning any.
Right. Like,
So I
I'm
will say
happy about
that.
the fact that this team has been able to get 2 of these wins when they very well could be 0-3 right now pretty easily. My concern is, again, the defense isn't the same level it was before, and the offense might not be any better than it was last year. In fact, it might be worse in a lot of ways through 3 games. And this is just to give you an idea. So there was a point in this game where the Steelers were up 14-0, right? It was a few minutes in the second quarter. They did not score any more points from the first couple minutes of the second quarter until just before the 2-minute warning of the game. They went scoreless for essentially 3 quarters. You cannot do that against almost any team in the NFL unless you happen to get them to turn the ball over 4 times or 5 times. And you're not going to do that every week. In fact, you might not do it again this year because that just doesn't really happen that often. Fumbles, especially, you get 4 fumbles in a game that you actually recover. Hilarious. Like, just ridiculous that would even happen at all. So, again, this team is very fascinating to me because they feel through 3 games like just again the same type of team in a different font, and that just cracks me up because I said that before the season, and I have a feeling I'm going to end up being right about that, and it's going to make it not very fun for me at the end of the season. So we'll see what happens with them, but that's definitely something I wanted to talk about because it's certainly heading that way. But let's get to
Yeah.
your last game here that you wanted to talk about, and that's the Buccaneers versus Jets game. Go ahead and lead us off here on this one, Zach.
So I mean, as far as for the Jet side, I don't think from Aaron Glenn's standpoint, from anybody on the Jets roster, you can be disappointed how the year's gone. The Bills game was a little upsetting, but also their defense had them kind of bottled up. Fields got hurt, so there was that transition in that game. Tyrod Taylor looked really good. So I mean, like, it was a weird game, but then also, my Lord, Tampa, like, can you play a non like cardiac inducing game, because this is just insane. And Chase McLaughlin is running out of chances to retain his job because they did win it in the end, but this was one of those games, one of those stupid kick return blocks.
Mm-hmm.
And was that recovered by the same person?
I
That
don't
was one of the ones.
remember if it was the same one, but like I know that who was it that returned it for a touchdown? I can't remember his name right now. I'd have to look it up.
Hold on.
But
Let's say it right here. Dang, it doesn't say.
let me
Wow.
see.
Hold on. I'll have it in just a second.
But no, I know what you're trying to say. Like the special teams for a lot of teams are it's rough. Like
Oh yeah, no, it was Will McDonald.
that's
Will
right.
McDonald blocked
That's
it
right.
and returned
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Because he cleared
Oh
that
yeah,
line. My
he's a
lord.
freak. To be fair, but yeah, like the
Yeah.
special teams.
Um,
To your point, yeah.
But Chase McLaughlin has now missed multiple kicks this season, and thankfully they're away from his dead cap hit. So, which is kind of crazy when you talk about kickers having a dead cap hit.
That's what happens, though.
But yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if it keeps going that not only that Tampa joins the Falcons with a quick kicker change, but thankfully Baker Mayfield and Emeka Egbuka, who does not look like a rookie whatsoever. My
Yeah,
lord, the plays that he is making are absurd.
Yeah.
Like I have not seen a rookie, especially rookie wide receiver of this caliber in a long time. And it's not even that like I think he's going to set any records. Like I think about Chase had
14
and Jefferson and all that.
Puka, obviously.
They've done some
like,
crazy
There's
stuff.
been some phenomenal rookie wide receiver seasons, but I think I get where you're coming from in the sense like when we did our draft show, which will be coming back later, the beginning of next year, just so everyone knows. We talked about the receiver class and how like Golden was my number one receiver in the class, in terms of like overall career outlook is what I kind of thought with him. Egbuka was hard to put any lower than like fourth for a lot of us because I was pretty confident that he was already going to be a professional wide receiver right away. Like he was going to do all of the little things that usually separate like rookies who are maybe even more physically talented than him, but just don't know how to play the position the way that he knows how to play it.
Yeah.
And you're seeing that already because he's had to obviously step in for Godwin being out to start the year, and now Evans is out, so he's going to be the de facto wide receiver one until at least Godwin comes back, if not then Evans too. He just does everything at a high level, and it's just so hard to deal with someone who knows what they're doing as a rookie because as a defense, you're going into a week like, okay, the rookie, how do we deal with the rookie? Normally, you're like, all right, if we really want to take him away, if he's that good, like there's ways to do that to a lot of rookies who just don't get the nuance of the position. They don't know how to win consistently at the catch point or whatever it might be. There's nothing defenses right now seem to be able to do to get Emeka Egbuka to actually neutralize him. It's because they're not used to guys being this well-rounded and able to play at the NFL level this quickly without it being like super scheme dependent or without it being as good as Baker's playing like elite quarterback play, like, Burrow to Chase and Stafford to like those are guys that can take advantage of a skill set better than anyone. Baker's been really great, but he's not necessarily this guy that's going to do that for them. So it is like Buka doing a lot of this himself.
Yeah, it just feels like he's been on the field for 3 years already, and
in a lot of ways he has, because he probably could have come out 2 years ago and been a good player. So, to be fair, it is what it is. But yeah.
Yeah. So, but what I will say in regards to Tampa, they've got to figure out, and I know there's the issues with the offensive line and all this stuff, but they've got to figure out
half their team is dead right now.
Yeah, half the team is dead and all this stuff. But like, if you're gonna sustain this winning ways, you've got to find a way to be able to put teams away because the close games are not like it's not a way to like survive throughout the season.
As good as Baker's been doing you have to give him a little bit of room here. It's been tough.
Yeah. I understand that, but like they're gonna have to figure out something because there's also a lot of other teams that are dealing with injuries as well. So
absolutely, yeah. It's interesting, like the injuries to this team. I mean, Mock is out for the year now. I think it is. Obviously, Godeke's been banged up. You hope that you're going to get back worse here soon. they can't keep having injuries on the offensive line. Like they're playing dudes who just simply shouldn't be out there. Like I'm sorry. Like, can you tell me anything at all, Zach, about Elijah Klein, about Luke Haggard?
No, I'm amazed that
Yeah,
I've never
can
heard these
you?
names before because I thought I've had the worst of the
Yeah,
worst
like
in
can you tell
Miami.
me anything
So
about those guys? How about a Michael Jordan signing and not citing and not the basketball player? You know, not that he'd be good at football at this age, but like not that guy.
and it's not Michael B.
Nope, not
Jordan
even
either.
him. It's the one that got Joe
Oh,
Burrow annihilated in Cincinnati, and he's actually probably been one of their best players that's had to come in, which is hilarious. It's just not sustainable, probably. But at the same time, you have a 3-0 cushion now. If you can just get healthy over the next couple of weeks, you might have been able to get away with it then, right? I'm not worried about Tampa.
yeah.
They've been able to make this happen for several years in a row now with injuries, without it. Like I think that they're going to be fine, but it is telling that they had to in all these games so far bring it down to the wire, right? Like that is something of concern, but I also have to give them a lot of credit for being able to do that while being so injured, right? It'd be one thing if they are fully healthy, all ready to go, like full go, and then they were still having to pull it out at the last second. Then you start to worry a little bit. But I think it's really kind of impressive when you think about the amount of injuries they've dealt with, if anything else. So
Yeah, definitely.
let's finish things off here with my last game here, the Ravens versus Lions. This one was a barn burner. And unfortunately for Ravens fans, it is, to me, and it's only been 3 games. I don't want to say this won't get better because last year we saw it flip on its head in the middle of the season once they moved stuff around on defense. But the biggest takeaway I have from this game is that currently, as constructed, despite the fact they should have more than enough talent on the side of the ball, the defense simply is not good enough. They are not good enough against teams that the Lions or that the Ravens are going to have to be able to beat if they want to get off this playoff losing issue that they've had since Lamar's been there. They're going to have to be a lot better than this in the playoffs and throughout the rest of the season. They're already 1-2. I still think they're going to win this division. I do not think the other teams are good enough, the Steelers or the Bengals. I do not think they're good enough to challenge for this division, especially with the Bengals missing Joe Burrow. But I think they're probably going to be maybe the 3 seed, maybe even the 4 seed if the Colts keep rolling like they are right now. Like I do not think this is going to be a high seed in the AFC as currently constructed. And once you get into a playoff game, if you have to play even a team like the Colts, who seemingly on offense could do whatever they want right now, a Chargers team that's letting Justin Herbert just throw the ball wherever he wants to and it's working. God forbid the Bills again. Like I don't know if this defense is good enough to combat those offenses and those teams unless Lamar is playing at the absolute MVP peak level that he plays at a lot of the time. But you're basically asking him against even good teams to play at the true like peak of his powers every single week. And right now, the rest of the offense isn't doing enough around him to allow him to do that. Derrick Henry has a huge fumbling issue right now. If he doesn't fumble that ball, who knows what happens? Maybe they go tie the game and this game ends with them winning it. There's just too many mistakes happening on offense and defense around him for him to make up for it like he has a lot of the time in the past. Look at the numbers, they look good, but his overall level of play has not been as high as it was last year, especially. Things have got to change with the Ravens quickly, and they have to settle into a groove. And we know they're capable of it, but it is a little concerning that they're mostly healthy on defense, and the secondary is mostly healthy, especially, which is the issue last year, and they're still having these problems. That is really concerning if you're a Ravens fan.
Well, I think also what's very concerning this week 1 is week 1 you got beat by Josh Allen. This week you got destroyed by David Montgomery and Jameer Gibbs on the ground. And so that's pointing out because again, Goff played all right. They weren't streaking open. They played well, but
No, he had to hit some really nice throws
they hit some really good throws. They got the timely ones, and it's not like they were getting abused through the air, but they were getting the plays that needed to get through the air. But the ground game took over because the Bills did not run that well when they played when they played Baltimore in week 1. But the Lions had their way, and that's after having 2 weeks where. Yeah, the Lions looked really good last week, but they looked rough the week 1, and we didn't know much about their offensive line. And last week it was a bit more of Goff and the passing game going off, as opposed to the rushing game really dominating. It was a full game, but It was kind of a bit more of just like a coming out party. So you have some concerns if you're Baltimore with the fact that you don't have a calling card on defense at all right now. It's not like you can stop the pass. It's not like you can stop the run. There's nothing here. And you can't just sit here like Buffalo and rely on Lamar Jackson to bail you out every time, because while he can, that's not necessarily fair. It can't be a one-man show. You have to have both sides of the ball if you want to compete and win in the AFC. As Dan Campbell said to his squad, that's the bar that they set in the AFC. And while like a 38-30 win, yeah, that's impressive. There's some big questions that you have if you're Baltimore. As far as Detroit, really awesome bounce back from week one. You have a monster game against Chicago, and then you come in, you take down a talented Baltimore team at home. So you just want the momentum to keep going. That was an incredible fourth quarter. That Dan Campbell has no fear, kind of calling the most fearless play calls possible. So it's going to be interesting to see the rest of their schedule. They play their next couple games. Let's see, they go against Cleveland this week, so that's going to be interesting. At least they're at home, and then at Cincinnati, at Kansas City, and then Tampa Bay at home. So that's going to be a very interesting 4-game stretch to see how can they keep their momentum up. I mean, you have 52 points against Chicago, 38 against Baltimore. Can you score the 40 points that Baltimore was able to put up against Cleveland, or are they going to give you fits? So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, and I do want to touch on the Lions a little bit like you did, because I focus on the Ravens, obviously, because I think it's, a lot more of a concern for them than it is anything else. But it's not to take away the fact that the Lions are just a really good football team still. Like, any questions you had after week one about whether the coordinators being gone was going to be this huge issue and whether the roster was still up to par, like, I think you can kind of put those to bed at this point. I think that ultimately the ship the guy who's really directing this ship is Dan Campbell. Like, he hired guys who he thought could replicate what they've been doing. And especially outside of the week one, like the offense looks just as dynamic and honestly, like, in a lot of ways, just as interesting to watch, and not just effective, but interesting to watch. Goff is still playing at a really high level. The offensive line has settled in for the most part. Like, that was kind of my biggest concern with this team, honestly. It was not so much the coordinators, because I trusted Dan Campbell to be able to keep things rolling in the way that he thought that they needed to keep going. The offensive line losses with especially Glasgow and then Zeitler as well, moving on to Tennessee, like, that was what I was most worried about. So far, it's been good enough. We'll see if it keeps up there as far as that goes. But at the end of the day, if you're the Lions, if your offensive line is able to at least block well with these two running backs running the ball, it's just really hard to beat this team. It just really is. Like, Montgomery obviously had a huge day. Gibbs was bottled up for the most part as a runner, but he did score twice. Like, this is a group that is probably, at least so far in their career, like, if they continue to play together for another year or two, might be the best backfield duo we've ever seen. Like, no joke. Like, they're approaching that level in terms of production and effectiveness. Like, we'll see if they can keep it up, obviously, the rest of this year and maybe another year or whatever it might be. But this Lions team is certainly in the conversation for one of the best teams in the NFL through 3 weeks, despite the Packers loss. We'll see if they can kind of avenge that later in the season and get back to, being at the level that the Packers have been through 3 weeks this year. But it's going to be very fascinating to see both of these teams in this game, the next 3 or 4 games, because the Ravens got to start stacking wins. Like, they cannot continue to lose. And that comes with the Chiefs next week. Like, can they put the Chiefs in a 1-3 hole, right, and keep them at bay? Or are they going to be in a 1-3 hole with the Chiefs starting to get back on track? Like, that's going to be a really telling game, I think, for both teams, but more so the Ravens, because at least with the Chiefs, like, they have a lot of reinforcements coming. The Ravens don't. Like, the Ravens are what they are right now. Like, they're not getting a lot of changes on the roster coming from injuries or anything else. So, we'll definitely be monitoring that next week. Probably going to be one of the games we talk about, realistically, kind of no matter what happens. So. But any other thoughts you have on any of the games we talked about today, Zach? Any other things you want to throw out there before we get out of here?
No, I'm ready for thank goodness, NFL, that you decided to do a doubleheader on Monday night and not start the second game at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
I cannot stay up that late. Yeah. It's ridiculous. But I'm hoping for some more fireworks this week, but praying to the Lord that the injuries slow down, because there were some brutal injuries this week.
Najee Harris and James
And
Conner, 2 running backs.
James Conner, Nick Bosa's
Yep.
done for the
Yep.
season. Who else? There was another one that I'm thinking of. There's just been a lot. So I'm really hoping that. Yeah, so I'm really hoping that it slows down a bit, because it's been a little tough to watch. That drives a lot of my content over at PFSN, but sometimes it's nice to not have to write about injuries. So yeah, hoping for some better luck this week.
Yeah, always want people to be healthy. Always want teams to be as good as they can be, so we can watch them be the best that they can be. But in the NFL, we know that is not the case most of the time. So, but yeah, we'll be back next week. Again, should be the same format. Hopefully, we'll have another co-host on for that one. We'll get some more guys involved here, but definitely watch out for that. And then tomorrow, of course, on this channel, we have our betting show. Maybe we'll have to get you on some point, Zach. We'll talk about that. Yeah, might be fun.
Possibly.
But no, we will be back tomorrow night for that, though, so tune in for that. Spoiler alert, some of us had a really good week, others did not, and I'll let you find that out tomorrow. But that'll do it for us tonight. And